on the line running for this office. So let's keep him in prayer, financially support him, and tell everyone we can about his campaign. But as executive director of Illinois Family Institute and Illinois Family Action, I'm really, really thrilled to be here. We try to fulfill our mission to boldly bring a biblical perspective to public policy. Say that 5 times fast, right? Bring a biblical perspective to public policy. Now, we do that on 2 fronts. First, we try to do that in Springfield with our state lawmakers to educate them on issues of moral concern. And then secondly, we try to do that in churches throughout the state of Illinois, where we educate and equip the saints to be active on those same issues, all right? Pro-life, pro-marriage, pro-family. Now, the 102nd General Assembly finished their spring session on May 31st. Our state lawmakers, can you guess this, have introduced how many bills so far in Springfield? Anyone want to take a guess? 1,200. You're way too low, Mike. 7,000 bills. 600 of them have been sent to Governor Pritzker's desk already. And they still have another year to go of legislation, January through May of next year. And it grieves me to report to you that our state lawmakers approved legislation to place female hygiene products in boys' bathrooms in schools statewide. They also passed legislation requiring county clerks to issue new marriage certificates to reflect legal name changes for transgender and non-binary individuals. They also approved of, quote, culturally responsive teaching and leading standards, end quote, which will infuse the assumptions of critical race theory, identity politics, BLM, Black Lives Matter, into, number 1, all teaching training programs, number 2, all professional education licensing, that's PEL, and 3, indirectly into all school classrooms. So instead of focusing on academic standards, our government schools are making sure that teachers are training in social engineering. Did you hear that? So instead of teaching math, English, and science, they're teaching social engineering. If you don't believe me, I want to ask you to please go to our back table and pick up this brochure. It's a quadfold. It lists the 40 top school districts in Illinois, back and front, and it reports the English language arts proficiency scores, math proficiency scores, and science proficiency scores. And then it rates the graduation, it reports the graduation rate, and then it tells you how much you're spending per student to get these deplorable results. So let me see here. I'm going to just pick out a city here that might be here. Rockford. Okay, Mike. Mike says Rockford. So in Rockford, School District 205, the English language arts proficiency level, those students meeting that, 16%. Only 16% are meeting ELA standards. How about math? 12%. How about science? A little bit better, 30%. Yet the graduation rate is 67%. And how much are Rockford taxpayers paying for those horrible results? $13,000 per student. $13,000 per student. What do you think? Are you getting what you pay for? So please go get that on the back table. And also there's an orange piece of paper that lists all the bills that we were this year. It's our Springfield update and the status of each bill. The most troubling bill that passed this year is Senate Bill 818. It's the comprehensive sex ed bill. And when you hear the term comprehensive, as a way to describe legislation, you can be sure that government has big plans to invade a new corner of your life. Comprehensive sex education for public schools is no exception. This bill was passed in the Illinois General Assembly in May along party lines. Not one Republican voted for it. The new law, which was signed in recently by Pritzker, will require highly objectionable sex ed material be forced on our public schools and into the impressionable minds of our young children as young as 5 years old. Did you hear me? As young. Now, in 2013, state lawmakers mandated the so-called comprehensive sex education for 6th to 12th grade. But this bill now expands that requirement from kindergarten through 12th grade. So this includes charter schools, and it's going to align with personal health and safety national sex education standards. Why is that a problem? Because the national sex education standards change frequently. And so if our law says that our curriculum has to align with national sex education standards, that means those things are going to change year after year after year. By the way, it also says that it's supposed to be age and developmentally appropriate and culturally appropriate. I want to ask, age appropriate, developmentally appropriate, culturally appropriate? Seriously? This Planned Parenthood legislation is none of these. Moreover, it is not inclusive nor respectful of Orthodox Christians, Jews, or Muslims. What families from these faith traditions deem to be age appropriate or developmentally appropriate is wildly different from what Planned Parenthood, the ACLU, and Equality Illinois celebrates. By the way, this is their bill. They've been lobbying for this bill for a long time. So in order to understand exactly what's in this bill, Illinoisans must read not just the bill, but also the national sex education standards. And since these so-called standards are updated frequently, like I said before, so will the curriculum being taught to our children. So one of the more popular sex ed lessons book is titled, It's Perfectly Normal. Yes, it's already being used in Illinois schools. It's Perfectly Normal is written with 10-year-old children in mind. Comprehensive sex education establishes a one-size-fits-all approach to sex education and exposes co-ed classrooms to material that would make most adults blush. In grades 3 to 5, the national sex education standards would require boys and girls in co-ed settings to explain common human sexual development, including masturbation. It would require them to learn or to talk or to discuss, to distinguish between sex assigned at birth and gender identity and explain how they may or may not differ. It would require them to define and explain differences between cisgender, transgender, gender non-binary, let me say that again, transgender, gender non-binary, and gender identity. How many of you can explain any of those or define any of those? Right? The 5th grade identity lesson plan instructs the teacher to define sexual orientation as the romantic attraction of an individual to someone of the same gender or a different gender. The 5th grade lesson plan also includes the definitions, quote, gender, the way a person identifies him or herself in a relationship to being male, female, neither, or both. Sexual orientation is defined this way: the romantic attraction of an individual to someone of the same gender or a different gender. The teacher is then supposed to explain to the 5th graders that gender and sexual orientation varies from one person to the next. Confusion about gender and sexual orientation is normal. Did you hear that? The teacher is supposed to say that confusion is normal. Where are they getting that? It's being taught to them. That's why there's confusion. Slightly older children will be educated on how to use condoms, obtain contraceptives, or even an abortion without parental consent or knowledge. And students will be encouraged to experiment with alternative sexual behaviors. That is why it is vitally important to look into the policy positions of the candidates who are running for office, whether it's a federal office, a state legislative office, your local village trustees, library board, or, and especially, your school. Too often, conservative voters elect Republican candidates who are Democrats in elephant costume. Outrageous as that might be, it doesn't seem to go the other way, does it? How many Democrats are in donkey clothing, right? So, as far as a call to action, I want to encourage you to focus on policy and not personality or parties. If the policy, it is the policy that are hurting or helping our communities. So please take time to connect with your local officials and candidates. Build a relationship with them and help them understand the issues you care about. Help them understand why these policies are so important. I'll be in the back if you have any questions, comments, or if you want to sign up for our emails. Thank you. I'm Dave Smith.
Ladies and gentlemen, can I have your attention, please? All right, everyone. I want to introduce our next speaker tonight. We are new friends. We actually don't live very far apart, just a few miles in Kendall County. And so Pastor Stephen Lee of Living Word Church in Orland Park, and he's got an amazing history. I'll let him give you a quick bio of himself, and then I think you're going to be excited to hear some of the things he has to say. But I'm so glad to have the Lord put everyone in a certain place and put us all here tonight for a certain reason. And praise God for what He does and how He puts people together and how He moves things. So, amen.
Thank you, Jim. It is a privilege and a pleasure to be here this evening with you. I'm really enjoying my new friend, Jim, and his wife, Jill. And my wife, Eileen, and I, we live in Montgomery, far west side of Chicagoland. I'm originally from California. You know things are bad in California when you got to move to Illinois to escape. I've got a lot of jokes, very inappropriate ones, because I used to be a cop before I was a pastor. If you want to hear some stories about some things, you can talk to me sometime. Be happy to share that with you or your group. Evening for 3 reasons. I'm here to tell you who I am. I'm here to tell you why I'm here. And I'm here to tell you what to do. And speaking as a former cop and current father and husband, grandfather, and pastor, I love to tell folks what to do. And they love to tell me where to go and what to do when I get there. Anyway, who I am. I've got a history of being a California law enforcement officer as a sergeant, sheriff's department out there, and then I went on to work for an organization as a federal special agent. The organization at the time was called NIS, Naval Investigative Service. They had to change their name because my wife always joked that they investigated navals. And now they call them NCIS. And I worked for them and was stationed out at Moffett Field in the San Francisco Bay Area, right in the heart of Silicon Valley, back in the Reagan years in the 1980s. And I was assigned to what was called FCI and CT, Foreign Counterintelligence and Counterterrorism. I remember we used to get pretty excited when we get a suspect who we thought might be a spy. The Chinese were starting to get involved in some of their spying activities, and it wasn't very sophisticated, and there weren't very many. It's a different day today, let me tell you. And I've got much to say about that, but not tonight. I've been a pastor, and I am actually a Lutheran pastor. And if you don't know what a Lutheran is, just think Catholic, and you've got it. I'm actually a Lutheran. I'm part of the denomination that still believes the Bible, stand on the gospel of Jesus Christ, pray in the name of Jesus in public, stand on the law of God, and stand on principle according to duties and freedoms in 2 kingdoms, as citizens in 2 kingdoms. One in the law of God, the kingdom of this country, which is actually a Republican democracy, representative democracy, based upon principle, based upon the law, and yes, natural law included, God's divine law, naturally understood, and specific things like the 10 Commandments. But also, I'm a citizen of the kingdom of Jesus, whose name I carry, and by whose name I pray. I've been a church planter, been a missionary to Africa, working with folks who've been involved in the Liberian Civil War. I've done consultant work on chaplaincy in places like Russia and Nicaragua. And it's interesting to me that I've been to Russia twice, I've been to Nicaragua twice. In both those countries, I had more freedom to speak the name of Jesus in the public square than I've had in the United States of America. You heard that right. I've also been, since I left law enforcement, I've continued my connection, and this goes back to 1973, as either an officer, a federal special agent, or a law enforcement chaplain ever since. Not as active as I used to be as a chaplain, but I've done that ever since. Most recently, I visited with the officer and his family, one of the 2 officers who was shot in downtown Chicago, prayed with the family at the hospital there. By God's grace, he survived. The female officer was killed. I've been at way too many bedsides of officers. Been to way too many funerals. Dallas, Baton Rouge, other places. Sometimes people say, well, you're a chaplain, a law enforcement chaplain. You must work with people in prison and jails with those folks there. And I say, no, I work with the folks who put them there. That's my crowd. And it is a different ministry. Prison ministry is very important. Work like Chuck Colson started. Very, very important that people in prison and jails hear the gospel of Jesus at a time when they actually listen. But my crowd is the law enforcement crowd, local, state, and federal. In my work as a chaplain, I've worked many what are called incidents, critical incidents of national significance, starting with Columbine High School. We were only 45 minutes away from Columbine High School, and I responded to that as an ATF chaplain. I was lead ATF chaplain at Columbine when that was actually in process. I helped to evacuate the teachers and the students from the west side of the school on the Pierce Street side and escort them back through a hole in the fence, back to Leewood Elementary School, where they were being reunited with their families. And you can imagine by the end of the day, later that night, as these kids were getting reunited, one after the other, who was left late into the night from these children's families? The families of those kids who were killed, the families of those teachers who were killed. I've been in the library. I've been in the library in Columbine to help put those victims in body bags. I was with two other chaplains, and we prayed with the CSI folks from CBI, Colorado Bureau of Investigation, right there in the library. Prayed for the families, students, the communities. I've been in mass shootings from Columbine all the way to the Mandalay Bay hotel shooting, where I worked with the FBI in Las Vegas. Of that mass shooting, which is the worst one I've ever been to, followed the bloody footprints of one person that went on across the street to the Catholic Church to hide. I've been to hurricanes, including Katrina, western wildfires, where the house that Elaine and I built burned to the ground years after we built it, and it was owned by somebody else. I've been to tornadoes, earthquakes, including Haiti. Been to a tsunami in American Samoa, working there. And yes, I've been to Ground Zero. I was a chaplain post 9/11 for about a month, working with the emergency responders, including FDNY Fire Department and NYPD and Port Authority Police Department. Past Saturday, I spoke in Orland Park as part of a 20th anniversary memorial. Talked about my experiences there. If you're interested in looking at that, you can find it online. Just look up 9/11 Chaplain Steve Lee, and you can see the presentation there. Okay, why am I punching out my resume here for you? It's not that I'm such a great guy. I just have lived a long time and been exposed to a lot of things. But it is to explain to you my background as a preface to why I'm here. And I bring a lot of experience to this, folks, as a Christian, as a pastor, as a law enforcement chaplain, and prior law enforcement, including foreign counterintelligence and counterterrorism. We face an existential greater than any that we've faced since the Revolutionary War, since World War II. In the Civil War, as deadly as that was, 600, 700, maybe 800,000 people dying, most costly war we've been involved with, if you don't count biological warfare in the form of COVID, which is a distinct possibility, and certainly in effect, if not in intent. Amen? In the Civil War, the Union was under threat of being divided. But the North was still going to survive as the United States of America, whatever the South was able to pull off. But today we're facing the extinction of America, at least the America that we know, the constitutionally based republic that we know, the history, the tradition, the reason why people leave the other places in the world and come here. We just recently saw Afghan parents passing their kids up to whom on the wall? American soldiers. They weren't going to the Taliban to be saved. Why do people cross the border and at great risk to themselves endure the abuse of human traffickers to come here and try desperately to start a new life? I don't fault them. I fault our governance. There should be a process. And by the way, they're not helping people. They're causing a lot of misery by allowing this. But I don't fault the people. They're trying to escape something and come find what we have here. And now we're throwing it away with both hands. We face an existential threat. We face both foreign and domestic threats, existential threats. And I believe that this country has never been in danger of being conquered from without, but definitely from within. That's a danger. There are geopolitical threats, there are economic threats. They've got a credit card and it's got your name on it, but they're the ones spending it. Guess who is going to have to pay the bill? There's a cultural threat. There is fundamentally a spiritual threat to this country. Now, why am I here again? As a former law enforcement officer, federal special agent, pastor, law enforcement chaplain, I've always avoided political and I've done this for ethical reasons, to avoid talking politics from the pulpit. My job has been to present the law of God and the gospel of Jesus Christ and the biblical wisdom that talks about both. As a professional law enforcement officer, as a chaplain affiliated with law enforcement agencies, local or federal, I've avoided politics. But guess what? I'm retired. And I'm still a citizen of the United States of America. And now it would be a sin to be silent. Now is not the time for politics as usual. Now is the time, and you've heard the phrase lately, now is the time to what? Save America. In Ezekiel 33 in the Bible, the prophet Ezekiel is told by God about the watchman on a wall. And he sees the enemy coming, and it's his fault if he does not blow the horn, sound the trumpet. The enemy today in America is truly at the gates. And I mean truly. And now is the time to sound the trumpet. So, what am I doing? And what should you be doing? I love to tell people what to do. Last Sunday evening, Elaine and I, we had invited Jim and Jill to our house for s'mores, because we got a fireplace, a campfire set up in our backyard there. And it was great to get Jill there. And I she said, I think this evening that she was wearing her shorts and the mosquitoes ate her up. And I said, yeah, that's why we had you there, so that you could leave us alone. And we had a nice visit, getting to know James and his wife. Finding out that we share the same understanding in a lot of things already. A couple of days ago, I had a conversation with Paul Hurst, Jim's communications director, and he asked me this, because he knew I was coming tonight. He said, would you consider endorsing Jim for Congress? Next month, I will be 69 years old. And this evening, I'm going to do something I've never done before in my life. And I will say here, I'm not representing a particular church or other group or nonprofit. I am speaking my heart. I'm going to publicly endorse right now a political candidate, Jim Marter. I am here this evening because Jim Marter is going to help save America, and we are going to help Jim to save America. You are going to do what Elaine and I are doing. You are going to write a check to his campaign for every dime you can afford and a more, like Elaine and I have done. You're going to donate, you're going to work for, and then you're going to vote for James Marter, Republican for Congress. Amen? Yeah, we love our kids.
All right, so we're getting about ready to introduce our keynote speaker here. Just before we do that, we are going to stand, give you a chance to stretch for a second, and we are going to say the pledge. Can I have all my veterans? Who's the closest veteran up here? Come on up. I'm going to have one of our veterans lead us in the pledge here. Larry Langston from the LaSalle County Republicans.
The greatest country on earth. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please protect and rights
All right. So I want to introduce another friend of mine, Rob Enright, back here, behind the man behind the curtain. He and another person are from the Plainfield Township Republicans, Dale Fontana, who's I can't see anymore because the lights are in my eyes, off that way. Plainfield Township Republican Organization. Good folks from Will County, right next to where we live in Oswego. So I want to thank them for everything they're doing and all their support as well. So without further ado, I'd like to bring our special guest speaker up tonight. She was born in Iran and subject to conditions that only she can really tell us about. But the Lord put all of us here tonight together and put people in this room together over the last half a dozen years or so that made the connections possible for me to be introduced to Annie. And tonight's the first time I actually met her in person. We've talked on the phone, we've talked in Zoom meetings over her blog show, and probably half a dozen other times, but I'm so honored to have her here in person. Annie Cyrus, please come up and tell us your story. Thank you very much for being here. God bless you for being here.
Good evening. Let's try that again. Good evening. There you go. Thank you so much for being here. And generously, all night or afternoon, James has been thanking everyone for doing everything for him. So I'd like to talk or say this on behalf of everyone, at least in this room. James Marter, thank you so much for having the courage to running for Congress. No, seriously. Nowadays, it does take courage to even run. Because the moment you say I'm running, comes evil. And of course, what I mean by that is Democrats.
Amen.
I will not take too much of tonight's time to tell you all the details of my life. I was told I'm allowed to say, if you'd like to hear the details of my story, we do have 2 events, Saturday and Sunday, information in the back. Please do join us. It is free to public. You just need to RSVP. For safety reasons. Can you believe that? We're in America, the freest country ever, but for safety reasons, you have to RSVP. And that's where my story starts. I was born in Islamic Republic of Iran. I was born in 1983. After the 1979 Islamic Revolution, therefore, I was born a Muslim in an Islamic country, in an Islamic family. My father was a sheikh, very Islamic, a leader who could make laws and regulations. And as I said, I'm not going to take too much of this. From the day I was born until I was 15, I went through the following. I was announced a full adult woman at age 9 by the government, not my dad. The reason for that was because the country's constitution is Sharia, which is Islamic laws. Within Sharia, the prophet, without the prophecy of Islam, Muhammad, had 11 wives. The youngest one, 6 years old when he married her, 9 years old when he consummated the marriage. Therefore, for 1400 years, every Muslim girl is announced an adult woman at age 9. From there, when you're an adult woman, you're responsible for your actions. You face consequences. So I was a normal teenager, you might call it here. I started getting arrested, being punished, put in prison, lashed for crimes such as having nail polish on, my hair accidentally showing from back of my hijab, singing loudly, accidentally in public, attending a party where boys and girls were in the same room, and on and on. By the time I was getting close to my 14 years old, as a Muslim woman, I was bringing too much shame to the family. So my father decided it is time for you to become somebody else's problem. He sold me to a man who made a good offer. The offer was, I'll pay you $50. Yes, 2 20s and a 10, actual American dollars. And 1 month of personal usage of opium from my father. He handed me over. I became his wife. Later, I learned that I was his child bride. Because when you live in a country that is ruled by Sharia, you're not called a child bride because you're not a child, you are a woman, therefore you're a wife. He wasn't the nicest husband you could ask for, so he did the Sharia thing, beat you up if he wasn't happy with your cooking, if he wasn't happy with your behavior, whatever, on and on. And yes, just in case if anybody's asking in their head. Yes, he did consummate that marriage. Yes, he did rape me as many times as he could. No, I couldn't go complain anywhere because, again, the Constitution is Sharia. Under Sharia, everything I'm telling you happened to me is legal, allowed, approved by Allah, applied by Muhammad. And again, as I said, if you join us either Saturday or Sunday, just look me up. I have gone into details of Quran, Sirah, Sunnah, Hadith. So these are all proven facts. So my grandmother, rest in peace, wonderful, wise woman, she decided enough is enough. When we realized there is no way out, she hired the smugglers to smuggle me out of the country, get me to Turkey, and I went to UN and tried to seek asylum. That's a story of its own. One day I promise I'll write it in the book or something. Anyhow, I made it to Turkey when I was 15. The case was so unique, they didn't know what to do with me because I was an underage asylum seeker with no guardian. So they accepted my paperwork, but said you have to wait until you are an adult under our law for it to be processed. Therefore, I waited and waited and waited. Anyhow, 18 years, when I turned 18, I finally got the call. Welcome to the United States of America. Your flight has been booked. Oh, it gets better. Since we're at it, in 2010, I became an American citizen. Woo-hoo! Yes, 8 years after I arrived in America, I proudly walked in, did everything I had to do and got my paperwork and became a citizen. So, a pretty rough childhood, I would say. Not the best childhood you can ask for. I made my way to America. I was very happy. I was very sad. I was confused. I was scared. I was filled with fear. I left everything behind. Walked into complete unknown with no knowledge of the language. I did not speak a word of English. Okay, I did know a few words like hi, dollar. Hey, when you're sold based on dollar currency, you know the word dollar. It just stays with you. But one thing I did know was that America is the freest country that exists. Why did I know that? When I was asked to pick 3 countries as my final destination, I looked at my UN lawyer and said, hey, which country is like free as ever? She said, America. I wrote number 1, America, number 2, America, number 3, America. She said, hey, if America doesn't accept you, you wrote 3 Americas. That's it, you're done. I said, oh, they will accept me. At that moment, the moment I said, yes, they will accept me, I was officially an ex-Muslim. I was done. I wasn't sure what I am. I was still in complete confusion of head. But that moment, I knew I said that and I wrote that because I had faith. Years later, well, I guess to be specific, 20 years later, I've been in America for over 19 years, but this was a few months before I came here. After 20 years, as I'm standing here, now I understand what that feeling of faith was. Because I was applying for a country that, 1, stood for freedom, 2, had the closest to perfection documentation ever written, known as United States of America's Constitution. Number three, this nation was built on Christianity. That was the faith that got me that day. Bad news, then great news, that amazing news, becoming an American citizen, right? However, today, as an ex-Muslim, as a human rights activist, founder of an organization that has rescued 21 cases to this day from Islamic imprisonment. Thank you. And as someone who comes out and calls it what it is not radical Islam, it is not moderate Islam. It is not hijacked Islam, and it absolutely is not going to be reformed Islam. It's just Islam. Simple as that. And I think I kind of did what Mr. Lee did. I told you my background so you know my credential to stand here and say, it's Islam. Now the problem is, because I stand here and I say problem is Islam, because I tell you I'm an ex-Muslim, because I told you I ran from my husband, there are 11 bounties on my head. 7 out of 11 of them were issued from imams inside mosques that are inside United States of America. How's that for freedom? The answer to me normally is, why don't you stop provoking me? Oh, sure. No, I have earned every bit of my freedom. I respectfully waited my turn 3 years of my teenage years until I was given an I-94 visa, which is an ever-expiring visa that will make you eligible for a green card status in 5 years and a citizenship in 8. 3 years of my life. You know why I did it that way? Do you really think I couldn't jump over a border or marry someone for a fake marriage? I don't know. Maybe I could find a brother like Elon Omar did. Yeah. I could have, but I didn't. And here are my reasons. I was coming to America to build a life. So, number one, I wanted to make sure that all of you in this room and every fellow American out there knows how much I respect you and your country, so I will not break the law in order to come in, regardless of consequences. Secondly, I wanted to make sure that all of you and my fellow Americans out there will respect me as a fellow American, not some illegal alien. Now I did all these good things. And mind you, I was a teenager. Sometimes I think about it, I'm like, wait, if as a teenager I could think that way, how is it that we have grown adults who have hijacked our government on November 20th, November of 2020 is what I'm referring to. They have hijacked our government, but they can't think for a second to realize you don't open the border, flood in Taliban Afghan men with their child rights in America and expect me to stay quiet. No, let me tell you why they think that. Because sadly and unfortunately, majority of Americans have decided to wait for someone else to do it. And that's why I say it takes courage. And thank you, James Marter, for doing it. Everyone in this room is qualified to run, right? We can all run for Congress. But the man sitting over there is the one who showed the real courage. And I will agree in middle of my the speech, I guess, I'll agree with Mr. Lee. He did his part. He did the hardest part. He did what we were waiting for him to do. Now it's our turn to do what we need to do. You know, cheering someone to do the right thing is the first step. But then when they gain momentum, you can't just cheer them anymore. You got to get behind them and run with them. So tonight is just the beginning. Tonight is the first night that we're all gathered, which is perfect and beautiful. It is. But tomorrow morning and day after, as life comes at us, as bad news comes at us, as fake news is released, we need to stay focused. What is the goal? Save America. And she's very well, I promise you. I know there are so many illegal aliens and undocumented, and then there are legal immigrants who became citizens who still absolutely have zero appreciation for this nation and this country, like who has Ilhan American. Would that work? Because she could not possibly find a way to hate America more. But guess what? She is Congresswoman Ilhan Omar. And I personally like to take accountability for that. I failed as an American citizen. I didn't do my part or she wouldn't be elected. When she was elected, I didn't make enough noise and say, wait a minute, after 181 years, we are bending over backward to lift a ban in our Congress so she can wear her hijab. But then if somebody is wearing a cross, it's a no-no. You see, we allowed all of this to happen. We need to start thinking this way. Democrats are out there to destroy this country, no question about it. We are facing socialist, communist, Marxist, Islamist. This is the definition of this squad, by the way. I don't memorize their name. I just memorize their ideology. We're facing them. But are we facing them? No. We don't want to be labeled Islamophobe. Well, I guarantee you, there is no such a thing in as Islamophobia. Phobia. I think irrational fear. Am I correct? Perfect. How is it irrational for me to fear Islam when under Islam, I was sold as a sex slave, I was beaten, I was put in prison, I was raped, I was broken, shattered into pieces. And thanks to America, I was able to put myself back together. But now I have to watch as they gain power in our government. But I can't do it by myself. I can tell you there is no such a thing as Islamophobia because under Islam, you won't have a life. I promise you, you won't. If you think Islam is one of those cults, I refuse to call it a religion because it's not. If you think Islam is a cult that is made for man, I hate to break it to you, it isn't. In Quran, Allah refers to his creation as his slaves. Man or woman doesn't matter. There are better situations for man, but in general, it's just going to basically take away your humanity. You are controlled. How to breathe, how to sleep, how to walk, how to build your house. I'm not kidding. I'm not. Go read Reliance of the Traveler. If you don't want to read it, that's completely understandable. I cover Reliance of the Traveler a lot on my videos. But if you do read it or watch my videos or Google it, no, don't Google it. I even laughed at that joke. Within Reliance of the Traveler, it literally has details on how to hold your hijab, how to step into a bathroom. I'm not kidding. If you are ever going to build a house in an Islamic country, you actually have to get approval on your blueprint because your toilet cannot face the Mecca. No, that one wasn't a joke. It's a reality. So it's time to take action. Even though we don't have enough immigrants who are grateful for this nation like me, but I can promise you there are so many future grateful immigrants who are waiting for us to hold on to this beautiful freedom, constitution, and country. So if you look at it as Americans, if you agree with what I do as a human rights activist and I go beyond borders within human society, this is it. Guys, we are it. America is the last place. They have taken Europe. They have taken Africa. Well, Middle East was gone from the beginning. This is it. America is it. They have already started it. They are already, you could say, well, halfway there. Fair enough, halfway there. Or am I over exaggerating? It's time to take back our country. And let me be very clear. I'm not talking about, any kind of, God forbid, violence or any of that. I'm talking about let's start practicing our God-given rights and stop thinking they can override our Constitution just because they're up there. And by up there, I mean Washington, D.C. Now, one of the best ways to practice your God-given rights is to actually talk out loud. It's called freedom of speech. One of my favorite things that I learned very early on, well, early on was when I could actually make a sentence in English, was our Constitution gives me the right to be offensive and gives you the right to be offended. Practice it. Listen, if somebody's feeling is getting hurt because you said, AOC shouldn't move from behind the bar into the Congress, it's okay because you're stating facts. Facts don't care for your feelings. Sorry, they don't. The fact, when I arrived in Turkey, went to UN, they didn't say, oh, she's fragile and her feelings. Let's just speed up her process. They said the fact of the matter is you're a minor with no guardian. Sorry. We got to continue the same attitude. Call them out, put facts on the table. And I understand many people are a little iffy about the election because of what happened in 2020. And I don't blame you. But here's the thing. For last 43 years in my motherland, people just don't show up to vote. On that note, they just keep putting whomever they want in power because nobody showed up to vote. That's what they want us to do. They want us to give up. So here's the note. Unlike Mr. Lee, I don't like telling people what to do, but I have no choice. Sometimes I know, coming from where I come from, I know what's here. And it's part of my personality. I'm not very good at looking away and pretending like it's not there. So don't. I don't mean to step on many wonderful pastors and chaplains' toes here, but did Jesus give up? Then why are we giving up? Oh, sorry, wrong question. First question should be, who's in charge? Who's in charge? Say it louder.
We are.
No. He's in charge. Did he give up? Then stop giving up. Stop giving in. Stop looking away. As a former, call it whatever you want to call it, I have learned to call it as a former slave to Allah and a servant of Muhammad. Nothing takes priority over your freedom. Nothing. One nation, under God. Every morning, write it on your mirrors if you need to. Hey, give me your numbers. I'll text it to you every morning. One nation under God. Stop the division. Don't play into their hands. And remember who's in charge. We need faith. And again, another reason, actually, amazingly, in my 19 years life in America, and since I've become a citizen, I have never, ever endorsed any candidate. I did this few times, but I'm going to stand here as tall as I can and proudly endorse James Marter for Congress. And I'm going to tell you why. He is one of those America First guys. I love that about him. Number two, he calls it what it is. He doesn't belong to a party. Yes, he is running as a Republican, but he is not running as a Republican to take the seat and then get big checks, sell us all out, and go home. No, because we do have those Republicans, you know what I'm talking about. Don't make me names. I have enough bounces on my head. He is running for Congress to fix the damage that has been done. Second reason, he's a man of God. Love that about him. I mean, don't get me wrong. There is so much more about James Marter. I'm just pointing out what got me a few months ago when Paul reached out to me, what got me to endorse him. First endorsement of my entire life in America. It was the fact that when I studied him, when I listened to him, when I talked to him, I realized he has faith and he believes. And that's what we need. We need to get behind anyone it is, a candidate, from federal to state, local offices. We need to bring back, okay, God, we need you back. How's that? And by the way, just in case if I skip that part, yes, I have been saved. Yes, it actually was a wonderful moment at a church, a stone church, correct? A stone church here in Illinois in 2017. So yes, I am a Christian. And no, I'm not promoting or preaching. I'm just telling you, as an ex-Muslim, and then for a while confused, and then atheist, and then saved. Wow, hell of a journey, isn't it? Okay, let me try to be more serious about this topic. Sorry. I can tell you that one of many reasons America is beautiful, it's because it used to be where they would take their oath on the Bible. And it kind of does bother me when now we have some of them taking it on the Quran. I don't know what's next, but I will cut this. I will wrap up because I think I can talk forever. Yes, I'm a talker. Please, if you have your checkbooks, write a check. As I said, let's do our part. Our part will be emotional support, idea support, financial support, we don't have a George Soros behind us. So we have to unite together and become a George Soros. We can all spur something, or some of you might be able to actually give a lot. And don't stop giving. You know, in a couple of days, if you have more money, go to his website, Marter 4 Congress.us. Go in there and donate. Continue donating. I guess what I'm trying to say is, one nation under God wasn't created in one fundraising night. So let's not give it up. When we leave this place, let's remember there is work to be done. We need to save our country because America has saved many good people. America saved me. Yes, I just said I'm a good person. There are so many people in line waiting to be saved by America. She is so very well worth the fight. And just in case, if we have to sacrifice and, compromise, she's worth that too. So let's unite. Let's United States of America, unite. Get busy, take action, don't go home, don't get comfortable behind the scene. A lot of bad news is happening. We need to reverse the damage. We need to bring our beautiful country back. Actually, I think by this Christmas, let's make it to where it's officially back to Merry Christmas and not Happy Holidays. How about that? And thank you for staying with me and not falling asleep while I was rambling on. So say no to Islam as well, please. Seriously, say no to Islam, say no to drugs, say no to Islam. Thank you so very much. You all have a good night.
Let's hear it one more time for Amy Cyrus. All right, before I get started, I want to introduce Mark Curran. He's former Lake County Sheriff, longest serving Lake County Sheriff. And if you live in Lake County, McHenry County, Kane County, or my county of Kendall, is there any other counties? Or DeKalb County, there is a Illinois Supreme Court district that needs to be taken back. So I want to introduce Mark, and then we'll go from there.
So yeah, I endorse James also. He's the guy, no doubt about it. And I'll tell you something. I remember back when Mark Kirk was the candidate. He's from Lake County, by the way. He reflects Lake County, Lake County Republican Party. Like it or not, he is Lake County's Republican Party. He was the hero of Lake County, trust me. And he's now a lobbyist for China, and all the other ways that he sold us out, and all the other ways it was an embarrassment that he had an R next to his name. So, as James said, I was a longtime sheriff, but I want to get into my background real quickly. I was a former county, state, and federal prosecutor, and I went out in private practice, and I did all kinds of things, represented all kinds of people, both corporations and people. I have a wide variety of experience. I was also sheriff. And what is at stake right now is the possibility of making the Illinois Supreme Court really far different than it is right now. The seat I'm running for is Kilbride's, and y'all voted him to not be retained. And the court is now 4-3. If you swing that seat, it becomes a Republican court as long as we hang on to Justice Burke's slot. So that's pretty exciting. Think about that. Think about all that Governor Pritzker's doing in the constitutionality of it, or not constitutionality of it. Think about all those things. And I want to thank also Linda Pressey, who helped run my U.S. Senate campaign. 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, we won 88 out of 102 counties. We killed Dick Durbin in his own county, and a blue wave hit up north, but it's not going to happen this time. So a little bit about myself and why I'm running. Similar to James, when he saw Mark Kirk was running without any opposition, and he saw how he killed us on bill after bill after bill, sold out America, sold out the unborn. David Smith, the hero back there, has been fighting for, and so many of the rest of you have. And he decided to get in. It's not right that he doesn't have an opponent. And I was the first elected official to endorse him in Illinois. And now there's a guy from my county that's running for Illinois Supreme Court. And I sat there, and the guy was an intern under me years ago. And I went around and tried to get other people to run because I thought, this is not good. we don't want him on the Illinois Supreme Court. And nobody would run. And I kept asking people and asking people and asking people. And I sat there confronted with the fact that I just came off a U.S. Senate campaign. I'm exhausted. I've been in politics 20 years, and I really had no desire to run it again. I had no desire to be a judge. I had no desire to be, on the Supreme Court. I like being a trial lawyer. I always viewed that as the guy that's throwing the flag up in the air, the judge. I'd rather be on the field. And it didn't appeal to me. But I sat there and I thought, this is it. As you said, this may be it for America. I think America might be where we're past the tipping point. We actually need a miracle. But nonetheless, everything hangs in the balance. And we're going to meet God soon enough. And I just thought, if not me, then who? And I couldn't find the who. And it just killed me. And I stood up. So these judges, the way they've run traditionally is, oh, I can't answer that. I can't answer that. I can't answer that. Right? And we don't know anything about them. And then we get killed when they wind up on the bench, right? And it's happened to every president. It's happened in state Supreme Courts throughout. Really the only branch that's dealing with the constitutionality on a regular basis is the Supreme Court. There's other issues that are appealed to the appellate court. The true constitutional issues wind up for the Supremes. And so it's an open book. I was the only elected official that stood in defense of marriage in Lake County. When Ed Sullivan, my Republican state rep, put gay marriage over the top. And I didn't do that because I was against, gays getting married, but I was worried about liberty. Where's that going to put us? Right? And where did it, shortly thereafter, Catholic Charities is done with adoptions and, everybody else is faced with these mandates that don't respect their conscience. Where are these judges on life? And I've been the MC of the Downtown Right to Life March. I've been the MC of all kinds of Right to Life events forever. I was elected as a Democrat first time. I was endorsed by all the Right to Life groups. I've been Right to Life forever. Thank you. I own guns. I'm an NRA member, and I'm not giving them up. And I believe that we have those rights. And, everything. Whatever the issue is, you can look up Mark Curran, and you can see that he has stood. And it's not going to be, a roll of the dice. And the other problem with electing somebody that's not a seasoned politician is the left is going to have a seasoned politician. And it's going to be a bloodbath, and it's going to be a fight. And if you can't hit back, forget it. And that's why we've gotten killed for so many races and so long. None of the emotion's been with us. So I'm really glad to be here. Just one last thing. I don't have the Marter story, not Marter, but Martyr of a lovely guest speaker, which was so awesome. But I was a Democrat. I switched parties. They hated me. I was somebody that has stood against the establishment in Lake County forever and ever and ever. They hate me. I was somebody that stood up to what was thought to be the worst state's attorney's office in the country. And I'm not, pulling this out. You can look up Lake County and wrongful convictions. The only Republican that stood up. Everybody else was gutless on that issue. I have consistently put it out there. And now I'm going against the establishment because they've decided that they want somebody that is milquetoast that they're going to have access to. They don't care about, your freedoms and your liberty. And they hate me, and they've always hated me. Sound familiar? Yes. Donald Trump has fought that battle. James Marter's fought that battle. I'm fighting this battle. I ask for your help. Thank you.
So Mark gave you a little preview of how I got into politics. For those of you that don't know, if you pulled a Republican ballot in 2016, I was on your ballot. And I don't blame you for not knowing me because nobody knew me when I was on your ballot in 2016. But Mark Curran, as he mentioned, was the first elected, he was the current Lake County Sheriff at the time, and was the first and one of the few elected officials in Illinois to stand up for me. And I thank him for that, and I will always stand with Mark Curran. I want to quickly shift gears a little bit because I have to thank the most important person in my life, and that's my wife, Jill. And she's over there. And she's been with me somewhat reluctantly sometimes, but you know, I couldn't do any of this without her and without her support, even though she didn't want to give it to me all the time. And trust me, as Mark said, I get that. You know, I got into a big race after being in a little race and having a little knowledge and a little bit of danger because I was a precinct committeeman for the first time. And that, you know, I always thought, hey, I always looked for the best Republican candidate I could find, the conservative candidate, because there weren't, at least in my assessment, there were no conservative Democrats or pro-life Democrats. And so I always assumed that that's how all the folks in our party were until I got into it. And in the last, so I've been busy in this for the last 6 years. Before that, I was just like every one of you out here. Jill and I were raising our 4 children. My daughter Katie, my son James, the second is here, his wife Samantha, and our bonus grandson Justin at the table over here. And with kind of lost my same train of thought because it's for them. We were busy doing all of that, raising our kids, supporting them. I was a scout leader for 15 years. I was a basketball coach for my other son and daughter's basketball leagues for about 5 years during some of that same time. And I assumed that we had fighters in our party in Washington. Remember 2004, that big red map across the USA? I thought I was done. I didn't have to worry about that. Why would I ever get involved in politics? We had all the right people in Washington, right? And what did they do? They just started spending our money. And I won't say like drunken sailors because they're far worse than anybody else on the planet. Those people in Washington, D.C., those animals who are out there spending our fortune and our children, our grandchildren's fortune away. And so that kind of gets you to where, so this is how I got in. I mean, I was kind of ticked off at him. I'm like, nobody's running against this guy in 2016, and someone better do it. Anyway, long story short, that didn't work out the way I thought because I assumed way too much. I was the green not green and Green New Deal. We'll deal with that later. But the green can in terms of it just didn't know what was going on. So 6 years later, twice elected Kendall County Republican Party chairman. We just took 13 new Republican seats in Kendall County in the last 2 years. While the rest of the collar counties were getting shelled around us and the Democrats were taking over. And a few other seats, including myself, I stole an Oswego library trustee board position away. Yes, I'm an elected official. They were not happy about that. They actually tried to sue me to stop me from being a write-in candidate. Imagine that. The enemies are everywhere. So I want to shift gears here a little bit. That was just to give you a little flavor about how I got here. But I do want to read, since this is Faith, Family, and Freedom Night, and I thank all of you for being here that support those principles, those 3 principles. And you probably thought, 5:30 to 9. What are they going to do between 5:30 and 9? So guess what? When you have pastors and politicians, you're going to use up all that time. Trust me. So here we are, embarking on this, and this is a journey for all of us. It's not just me and my campaign, but all of those patriots. You can figure out who they are. Watch all the candidates, listen to them, find out who's backing them, and be out there backing all of the good candidates, because that's what we have to do to take America back and save America. So I want to read from James chapter 1. How many Jameses do we have out here tonight? I know there's a couple. James chapter 1. And I'm not going to read everything I've got here, but the first part. This is about perseverance. My brothers and sisters, consider it a great joy when trials of many kinds come upon you. Perseverance must complete its work so that you will become fully developed, complete, not deficient in any way. Any of you who lacks wisdom must ask God, who gives to all generously and without scolding. It will be given. But the prayer must be made with faith and no trace of doubt. Because a person who has doubts is like the waves thrown up in the sea by the buffeting of the wind. That sort of person in two minds, inconsistent in every activity, must not expect to receive anything from the Lord. It is right that the brother in humble circumstances should glory in being lifted up. So it's with that I came across that scripture when I was looking up for a prayer call that Pastor Stan and his wife Delbert back here. They run an Illinois prayer call every Tuesday morning, 6:45 a.m. to 8 o'clock, and sometimes they go a little longer. But I believe it was Paul Hurst who introduced me to that call back in my last little run. And it's a time for people to pray about Illinois and Illinois politics. And I kind of realized that's why I'm back here, because of that perseverance thing. It's so to be clear, I've been in 3 big races and a few others, and helped out a lot of others in between. And I've lost those battles, but the war is not over. So what we have now, and I believe this, and I know a certain U.S. Senate candidate believes this too, election fraud is the #1 threat to our liberty in America right now. And like I said, I thought I was done, but we had a little election fraud and engineering going on November 3rd in 2020. And what precipitated after that was we saw this on the TV. We saw the evidence. Ballots being pulled out from under a table with a black cloth, just like those tables in the back of the room. The Republican election judges sent away, the reporters sent away, and only the Democrats were in the room running the ballots through machines. And I heard reports that in some of those cases, they just ran the same ballots over and over again. We saw in Detroit, Michigan, the election authorities kick out all the poll watchers, all the election judges, put up cardboard on the windows, and wouldn't let the Republicans observe the election. Is this America, or is it some third world country? I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe my own eyes what we were all seeing. And then post-election comes the adjudication project. Now, I'm not an attorney. I'm sure Mark could tell you more about this. But I expected we have a justice system with due process. And it's amazing that the man on the ballot, at the top of the ballot, and the citizens of the voters of the states, of the states that were the contested states, apparently to Democrat judges and Democrat states or attorney generals for the states, Democrat clerks in county like Wayne and Detroit, Michigan, apparently we don't have standing to review the results or audit the results of our own elections. This is why I said I believe it's the #1 threat to our country right now is we got to clean up our elections. We need free and fair elections. And if they're free and fair, nobody should have a problem with us looking at it and validating that that's true. So then along comes another day when we have a constitutional opportunity to challenge the election results. And you know what I'm talking about. That's January 6th. And there were hundreds of thousands of peaceful patriots gathering that day because they wanted to show their support for that process, which is supposed to play out in we the people's halls of Congress in the Capitol building in Washington, D.C. And we know what happened that day. We saw riots, we saw bad actors, and I heard Marjorie Taylor Greene say this as well. We are angry at those people that did that because they distracted what was really supposed to go on that day. And we didn't get our day, our due process that day because of what occurred. But then what we couldn't believe is what occurred after that. So now all of a sudden, it's not the Capitol Police. It's not Nancy Pelosi who's in charge of security in Washington, D.C. It's not anybody else in D.C. who's in charge of that. It was President Trump, our president, who was now responsible for an insurrection. Now, back in 1775 and 1776, how many insurrections start with no army and no guns and no anything else? These were peaceful protesters. There were no people there to run an insurrection. That's the big lie of many big lies they tell. And then along comes this little unconstitutional process, which is a constitutional process of impeachment, but they don't actually do it according to the process they're supposed to follow. No due process, no real trial, no real investigation, just a sham impeachment process. Sham impeachment number 2, by the way. And enter little Adam Kinzinger. Why do I call him Little Adam? It's not because of his stature, but because he's done little or nothing in over a decade in Congress as an elected Republican in that seat that he holds in the 16th district in Congress. He's voted for every budget-busting omnibus bill in every session of Congress he's been in, including billions in wasted fraud and abuse and funding for Planned Parenthood every single time. Yet he runs, and I was on the ballot against him in 2018, and he runs ads. He's 100% pro-life. Well, really, Little Adam, when were you there at the Planned Parenthood project in Aurora before it started? I was there. Where were you for any March for Life in Chicago or any place else in the state of Illinois? Where were you for any 40 days of life out there praying in the rain with your wife? Where were you, Little Adam? So now he's a supporter of government green energy where they pick winners and losers. He gets his campaign cash from green energy companies now. But here's one of his biggest sins in my book. He calls us kooks. We're kooks because we want election integrity. We're kooks because we saw the ballots pulled from under a table and counted in the dark of night. We're kooks when election authorities in Pennsylvania ignored state laws, as well as clerks and judges, and dismissed all the challenges because of standing. You know who the real kook is? Adam Kinzinger. He also doesn't like our Second Amendment very well, though he runs ads that he's fully endorsed by the NRA, A rating. Yes, he is. I bet, except he was the first one to jump on the bump stock ban when we have a devastating mass murder in Vegas. So he jumps on that, the first signatory of that. And this year, HR 8, he voted for Pelosi's and Biden's gun grabbing bill, which federalized private transfers of firearms. So this is our Adam Kinzinger that we have. And then the big lie, of course, let's go back to that election integrity thing. Russian collusion. How many of you are tired of hearing? I mean, I apologize for bringing it up. How many of you are tired of hearing after 4 years of Russian collusion, the election was stolen? Oh, that was Hillary Rodham Clinton saying that for 4 years. It wasn't anybody else. The election was stolen. The fake news said it. Never-ending investigations. But who is on the front end of that? Little Adam Kinzinger with the fake Russian dossier that we now know was fake. And we know that everybody in D.C. knew it was fake. And yet it was in Adam Kinzinger's hands before anybody else had it. Why was that? So, what else has he done? Well, campaign donations from a group called Free Syria. This is another Islamic group, and we just heard about that tonight from Annie. Whose side is he on? And then we have Reagan's 11th commandment, right? You're not supposed to speak ill of another Republican, except if you listen to Ronald Reagan when he was talking about that, he also talked pretty much about the 80-20 rule. If they're 80% with us, you shouldn't be talking ill about them. We're not talking about somebody who's 80% with us here. If he was, I would have never run against him in 2018. He's bashing Republicans, not only our president, but Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, Illinois representative of the 15th Congressional District, Mary Miller, Congresswoman Lauren Boebert, who I had the opportunity to go to support her and her fundraiser at Trump's Bedminster National Golf Course, and President Trump was the keynote speaker there. He's out there attacking them. Oh, by the way, he's not to miss someone. He was attacking Senator Ron Johnson in Wisconsin. So who besides the other 9 Republican traitors, including Liz Cheney, hasn't he attacked? He attacks the Republican Party. And then he's got a new hashtag, don't you know? He said, my hashtag is restore GOP. Well, I'll tell you how to restore the GOP. Get rid of Adam Kinzinger. So for full disclosure, I am announced against Adam Kinzinger, if you hadn't guessed, in the Illinois 16th District. But we have something going on, a constitutional process, by the way, because of the constitutional census every 10 years. But unfortunately, the Biden administration and the Democrats in Illinois are in control of that here. And so we have no idea, where the maps are, and I have no idea where I'm going to really end up running with that. But here's been my promise to everyone since I got in this race. If little Adam Kinzinger is in a district running for Congress that's in the, mostly in the swath of the 16th district, especially LaSalle County, I'm going after him. And if that doesn't happen, we've seen a few maps that have been released to the public, and there's been some consistency in them. If you haven't seen them, I'll give you the short version here. The 16th district, as we know, it's going to get chopped up according to what their thinking is, if that's truly their thinking, or it could be a fake straw man, who knows. The 16th district will get chopped up. There will still be a 16th district because we have 18 districts in Illinois. We're losing one. Guess what? They're going to number 1 through 17. And the new 16th might end up around Peoria, where I grew up. I guess I could run there, right? And on the west side of Illinois on the Mississippi River. So that most likely, assuming Congressman Darren LaHood would still be running this cycle again. We haven't heard he's not. Most likely he would go there. I'm pretty sure little Adam's not going to run against Congressman LaHood. Now, when you look at the rest of the districts, he would be facing a primary challenge by me or somebody somewhere, and most likely a Democrat incumbent in all those districts. Now, we'll see whether this man will stand up to that, because does he want to face a Republican primary, which all the guns are coming out after him, and a Democrat challenger that's an incumbent in the fall? I'm thinking maybe he's not going to do that. We'll see. We don't even know when the maps are coming out. We might not see him till Christmas. Hopefully we see him in October. If the map that was most recently released comes out, I would be in the 14th, which is where I am today. That would include Kendall County, maybe all of LaSalle County or most of it, half of DeKalb County, the western half of Will County, maybe parts of Bureau or Putnam County. That's one of the current thoughts. And in that, we have what I call the fifth squad member, Congresswoman Lauren Underwood. And oh, by the way, when Ilhan Omar on the House floor as a new Congresswoman spoke illy of the Jewish people and the state of Israel and other remarks that were stricken from Congress, Lauren Underwood said nothing about it. Questioned by lots of reporters, lots of people, said nothing about it. To this day, she says nothing about it. But let's tie her back to election fraud. So guess what she did the year that she won her first term in Congress and took out my Congressman Randy Holtgren? She voted twice in that election. This is what Democrats do. I'm a Republican county chairman. I've been a candidate. I'm an IT guy too, by the way. I know what's in the voter data file. If you want to know how to cheat in elections, I can run a training session for you without the clerks even getting involved, without software being manipulated. I can tell you how to use the data in that database that's really publicly available to any candidate, any political party, and I can show you exactly how I would get votes into that system if I wanted to commit election fraud. Number one issue in this election. If we don't fix this, we're done. So I'm going to wrap up on Little Adam and the maps with this. I believe when we do see those maps, he will have nowhere to run and nowhere to hide. And I just want to put on the table here one thing for clarification, because there's a lot of Republicans that, not only Adam Kinzinger, that turned their back on President Trump. Former Governor Jim Edgar, half of the former leadership of the Illinois Republican Party, they came out and told everyone, we're putting money into Biden, voting for Biden. If anyone has any doubts, my wife Jill and I were at the inauguration of President Trump in 2017, January. We went to the Freedom Ball and got to see him and Melania, the First Lady, and his family come out with, I would say, thousands of our military people at that same ball. It was a wonderful event, a wonderful time. I've been to 3 Trump campaign fundraisers for his 2020 election. 2 of them, I wrote the biggest check I could write to get into those events to support my president. When I had a friend call me up and said, hey, let's drive 5.5 miles to see him in Southern Illinois on a Saturday morning, he called me up Friday night. I was there standing with all those deplorables in line for 2 hours in a cornfield trying to get into an airport field to see our president. And I was actually selected by my party as a presidential elector, the Electoral College 2020 presidential elector for Donald Trump, and I was honored and humbled to take that. Unfortunately, I couldn't execute that constitutional duty because I was so looking forward to being able to do that. So I just want to be crystal clear, if anyone thinks that I'm going to run away from President Trump because some in my party think we shouldn't talk about him anymore, you got to be kidding. We have our number 2 threat. It's been spoken about tonight a few times here, and that's pandemic. Number 2 threat to our liberty right after the election integrity. 2 weeks to flatten the curve. 3 weeks. Do it to protect others. Protect your family. You're not essential. Small businesses are not essential. Who decided you're not essential? 18 months later, we now have a nationally and globally coordinated mandates for vaccines, masks, or weekly testing, and sometimes with no choice about the vaccine. We have our governor that issued an order to our Department of Corrections officials that they must get the vaccine, I think, by the end of this month or they're fired. We have the governor doing that of our state. We have school boards harassing, bullying, and coercing parents, students, and individuals to follow their dictates, except it's not law. It is not law. Let me repeat that. It's not law. You don't have to follow it. That doesn't mean it's going to be easy if you don't follow it, but it's not law. We have to start standing up for our rights. Everyone from the illegitimate president to King J.B. the Hutt Pritzker, ISBE, school boards, local government offices are drunk on power, a power they don't have. The people are giving them the power. Stop giving them your power. You can't quarantine children or anyone without a specific order. Stop giving them your power over you and your children. As Annie said, stand up. Encourage others in your networks and your families and your friends to stand up, because trust me, they're afraid. I've got people reaching out to me and I don't even know what to do to help them. All I can do is pass them information and tell them, number one, file a conscience objector form immediately and get documentation that they told you that you have to do one of these unconstitutional things. Get that done. Number two, don't quit. Make them fire you. If you're going to take a stand, don't quit, because if you quit, you leave your job, you got nothing. Find an attorney. I do have, if you email me, and I know our resource at the back here, if you email my email there, I've got a list of stuff I've compiled from a bunch of good patriots out there that are passing it on to me. I spoke to an attorney in Rockford last week about this. He's doing the forms for folks. He doesn't have the time and resources to take on cases, but he might be able to refer people. And he said this about the Illinois law. By the way, the Illinois law. We have a law that was passed by all of our legislators except 2 state senators in the 80s and the governor. And he said, this is one of the best laws protecting your medical privacy, which isn't just limited to jab mandates. It also covers testing mandates. It also covers forced vaccines, if you read the intent of the law and the broadness of that law, because it's one of the best in countries. He said a normal case with this going to court, any good judge, it's a slam dunk. That's his words, not mine. You need to know that so that you can defend your own rights and your family's rights. Switching gears one more time. Last time around, I met a very good person who summarized when she asked, what do you stand for? And she said, oh, you stand for liberty, security, and the economy. So let's talk a little bit about security here. Biden's America, Afghanistan, making the Taliban great again. I call it treason. We have 13 American military dead. We have American hostages, 1,000 or more Americans left behind. And there's genocide occurring right now, possibly tens of thousands of allies and people that we were there to help them out, and we let them down in this botched exit from Afghanistan. People left behind to do what Annie knows so well, being raped, tortured, and in many cases killed with our own U.S. military equipment. $85 billion of military hardware. How do we know that? The Biden administration told us what they left behind. Black Hawk helicopters, Humvees, rocket launch grenades, military intelligence equipment and secrets, and 600,000 small arms of every kind and ammunition to load them. And yet they want to take our guns away, and we can't even hardly buy ammo. This is Biden's America. We are the most insecure we have been, I believe, almost in my entire lifetime, which included the Cuban Missile Crisis when I was a baby. So this is what we're up against. We need to take back our government from the Democrats, socialists, communists that are in control of it, and we need to take it back right now in 2022 and follow it up with our president in 2024 and take America back. We got to stand up and save America. So I'm going to wrap up here, but I just want to make sure that you understand some quick things about me if you don't know these. I'm America First. I'm Freedom Caucus. That means I'm going to vote to relentlessly pursue cutting the size and scope of the federal government and make sure everything we do in Washington follows the Constitution. I am 100% pro-life. I stand for the innocent child, the unborn child in the mother's womb. And I will protect your right to keep and bear arms that shall not, all you lawyers know this, what does shall not mean? Shall not be infringed. It's not about hunting. It's not about sport shooting, target shooting, whatever. It's about protecting yourself from a tyrannical government. So I want to close here with a reading from Ephesians chapter 6. Finally, grow strong in the Lord with the strength of his power. Put on the full armor of God so as not to be able to resist the devil's tactics. For it's not against human enemies that we have to struggle, but against the principalities and ruling forces who are masters of the darkness in this world, the spirits of evil in the heavens. This is why you must take up God's armor, or you will not be able to put up any resistance on the evil day, or stand your ground even though you exert yourselves to the fullest. So stand your ground with truth, a belt around your waist, uprightness, a breastplate, wearing for shoes on your feet the eagerness to spread the gospel of peace, and always carrying the shield of faith so that you can use it to quench the burning arrows of the evil one. And then you must take salvation as your helmet and the sword of the Spirit, that is the word of God. In all your prayer and entreaty, keep praying in the Spirit on every possible occasion. Never get tired of staying awake to pray for all God's holy people. And pray for me to be given an opportunity to open my mouth and fearlessly make known the mystery of the gospel. I want to thank you all for being here. We still got a little more time, and I know we had another special guest, and the lights are bright, but I think I see him here in the back. So we have a governor candidate, state senator who's fighting for us in Springfield, Darren Bailey. And I thank him for working out his busy schedule to take time to talk to you. Here we go, State Senator Darren Bailey. Thank you.
Well, it is an honor to be here tonight. We're going to keep this very short because this man, he's winding it up. And I know when it's time to wind things up, it's time to wind things up. So I apologize. We've been just come back from the Three-Headed Eagle Alliance in Geneva. And man, they're working hard for to protect our integrity of our vote. So it was amazing, packed house there. So we thought it ended at 7 and it ended at 8. So I apologize. You know, when you walk into a room and you hear someone quoting scripture, I'm telling you what, this is a country founded on the Bible, period. Proverbs 28:2 tells us that when there is moral rot in a nation, its government topples easily. But wise and knowledgeable leaders bring stability. Friends, I'm here to tell you, James Marter, he's a wise and knowledgeable leader. I know that. So we've got a lot of work to do. We know that in the next year and a half, but we can do that. Our founding fathers created a process, and I still have faith in that process. I have faith, and I believe that as we, as Americans, as Illinoisans who have been trampled, the embarrassment of the entire nation, stand up and we work together and we work hard and we show up as poll watchers and election judges, and we go into our schools and in our communities and in our workplaces and within our families, and we find people who aren't registered to vote and we make sure they get registered to vote, and then we educate them, and we find people who haven't been showing up to vote and we educate them and inform them of their duty, their moral obligation and duty as an American to vote. Friends, I believe that in 2022, we're going to turn this state around, and we're going to send good men and women to Washington to get our state, or our country and our state back under control. So I thank you so much for being here tonight. It is an honor to be able to come here and share with you, James. Thank you so much for your friendship. Thank you so much for not giving up. We can't give up, friends. You know, I'll end on this, and I'll like I said, going back to the point of the scripture that I heard, friends, that's where it's at. I'm here to tell you that, this country, why are we here? We're here because Europeans many, many years ago fled religious persecution. God brought them here to this country. It was a haven. And let's talk about 250 plus years ago. Trenton, Concord, and Lexington. You know what's so special about that? Remember the shot heard around the world? I don't know that our kids in school today are learning about that. Shot heard around the world, those three communities. Those were the churches that stood up. The Continental Army wasn't quite developed yet. Those were three individual churches. Go to wallbuilders.com, look it up if you don't believe me. Those were churches. We have a moral obligation to stand up today. Our duty is to protect this Constitution. And how do we do it? We vote. It is a duty to stand up and vote and encourage everyone to do the same. And we must get ourselves educated and acclimated to this process. And it's going to take a lot of work, and it's not fun, but it's going to have to be done if we're going to reclaim this country. So friends, I'm here to tell you that the grassroots movement, look us up, BaileyForIllinois.com. You'll see this wonderful grassroots movement that's taking place every day on this campaign where Cindy and I go. We're in the churches on Sunday, and churches are waking up, and they're tired, and they're understanding their role and their duty in government. It's happening. So in 2022, we've got some serious, it's going to be a great year, friends, because we're going to work hard. We're going to see the fruits of our labor. We're going to fire J.B. Pritzker, and we're going to send men and women like James Marter to Washington. God bless you. Thank you so much for being out here tonight and supporting this man. He needs help. Get behind him. Bless you.